Lesson 7, The American Revolution, Section 1, American Strengths and Weaknesses. American Strengths and Weaknesses. The Patriots were in a vulnerable position when the American Revolution began. With a small navy and a hastily organized, untrained army, the Patriots' weaknesses were far more obvious than their strengths. American Weaknesses. The Continental Army was always short of men. General George Washington never had more than 20,000 troops at one place and time, with many soldiers only enlisting for 6 months or a year. Just when they were learning how to fight, they would pick up their muskets and return home to take care of their farms and families. Few Americans were trained for battle. Some were hunters and could shoot well enough from behind a tree, but when facing a mass of well-disciplined redcoats, they were likely to turn and run. The army was plagued by shortages of supplies that they desperately needed. Guns and gunpowder were so scarce that Benjamin Franklin suggested arming the troops with bows and arrows. Food shortages forced soldiers to beg for handouts. Uniforms were limited, and in winter, one could track shoeless soldiers by their bloody footprints in the snow. Such shortages outraged Washington, but when he complained to the Second Continental Congress, nothing changed. Congress, the new nation's only government, lacked the power to raise money for supplies by taxing the colonies, now the new nation's states. In desperation, Congress printed paper money to pay for the war, but the value of this money dropped so low that merchants demanded to be paid in gold instead. Like everything else that Americans needed, gold was also scarce. American strengths. Still, the Americans did have strengths. One was the patriotism of people like Joseph Martin, who willingly gave their lives to defend the ideal of a country based on liberty and democracy. Without them, the war would have been quickly lost. The Americans also received help from overseas. Motivated by their old hatred of the English, the French secretly aided the Americans. During the first 2 years of the war, 90% of the Americans' gunpowder came from Europe, mostly from France. In addition, a Polish Jew named Hayes-Vlachos, who immigrated from New York in 1775, helped to finance the war effort. The Americans' other great strength was their commander. In addition to being an experienced military leader, George Washington was also a man who inspired courage and confidence. In the dark days to come, it was Washington who would keep the ragtag Continental Army together.